Aeronautica, in collaboration with Hermes, warmly welcome you to this event that will address the Latin America air transport sector in the post-COVID era, resilience and efficiency through leadership and cooperation. We would also like to thank our media partner, ALTA, for joining in this event. My name is Jorge Garcia, Chief of Centro de Estudios Aeronáuticos, the academic branch of the Colombia Civil Authority. It is a great pride for us, jointly with Hermes Air Transport Organization and ALTA as a media partner, to generate these spaces for consideration and to give the opportunity to listen to key players of the aviation community in order to acquire different perspectives and views about the challenging situation that arises from the COVID-19 pandemic. The purpose of this event is to inform the audience of the importance of working as a team in order to resume the activity for aviation worldwide. We will be focusing our attention and analysis in the Latin American region. In this scenario, we will also work on the need and importance of creating awareness in the business network, giving a scope to strategies that will help in the management to deal with our new reality and that can significantly affect the strength and stability of the aviation industry. Before we begin, we extend a warm welcome to our speakers and attendees who we thank for participating in this event, which will allow us to have a global view of the challenges that has to be tackled through leadership and cooperation. Please note the following recommendations. We remind you that the participants are not allowed to speak directly. Please keep your microphones and cameras closed at all times, except for our speakers and panelists. And in order to open this event, I would like to introduce Mr. Juan Carlos Salazar Gomez, Director General of Colombia Civil Aviation Authority, who has recently been elected as ICAO Secretary General. Mr. Salazar, please.
Very good morning to everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank all participants, but in particular, Hermes group for this very important event that has helped us to co-organize and offer in the region. I would like to thank our special guests, the President of the ICAO Council, Mr. Salvatore, also the Executive Director for ACI International, and our panelists that under the wise guidance of Jeff Poole, President of Hermes organization, will conduct us through a very interesting discussion. ICAO has been working hand in hand with industry representatives, with governments, to develop guidance documents in order to restore harmonization in international air transport. The importance of this moment is that the challenge still continues, taking into account that the capacity to implement these recommendations, these recovery plans, is uneven in different regions and the different states. And the financial effects of this pandemic and the disruption of international air travel go beyond the main industry players. It includes not only airlines, but also airports, air navigation service providers, and even civil aviation organizations and other service providers in this chain. In this event, we intend to seek opportunities and to share experiences of work in order to work together as one team to restore the confidence in international civil aviation from the traveling public, from governments, and from health authorities, especially in our region, in the Latin American and Caribbean region. Again, I would like to thank Hermes organization, the University of Agen, who has helped us to organize this event, and ALA as a co-organizers of this event. I hope that you will enjoy our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salazar. And now I want to invite Dr. Kostas Iatrou, Director General of Hermes Air Transport Organization, for his opening statement. Dr. Iatrou.
Good morning. Buenos dias, dear friends, colleagues, and Hermes members. Aviation has been globally facing its work crisis since last year. With the vaccination underway, positive signs emerged and the economies around the world are preparing for a restart. For this reason, the theme of the event today focuses on the Latin America air transport sector in the post-COVID-19 era, resilience and efficiency throughout leadership and cooperation. For the first time, Hermes Air Transport Organization hosts an event in Latin America thanks to its cooperation with Aeronautica Civil de Colombia. I would like to thank Juan Carlos Salazar, Director General of Aeronautica Civil de Colombia and Hermes member, for co-organizing this event, Professor Andrea Papatheodorou and the University of the Aegean for providing the Zoom platform, and finally, ALTA for being a media partner of the event. Thank you, gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Iatrou. And now, in order to start with our key presentation and key speakers, I would like to present Mr. Salvatore Sciacchitano, President of the Council of ICAO, who will be addressing our audience as one of our key speakers. Mr. Sciacchitano, please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Let me start congratulating the organizer of this event, Mr. Iatrou, and Mr. Juan Carlos Salazar, Director General of Civil Aviation of Colombia, and recently elected as a new Director Secretary General of ICAO, for organizing this event, also for the efficiency, I would say, because it's not common to have an event that's starting not on time, but even ahead the time plan. That's very good, the sign of efficiency. But apart of this opening, let's start talking about more serious issues that are the implications of COVID-19 on international transport during the pandemic. The latest ICAO economic impact analysis on civil aviation reveals that we are back to 2003 levels in terms of our global seat capacity. Presently, ICAO is projecting an overall global reduction in passengers of between 40 and 50% for 2021, compared to the 60% reduction we monitored in 2020. And the 60% is a global reduction. International air transport was minus 70%. So these are incredible data that are seriously impacting on international air transport. South America, currently weekly aircraft movements are mirroring the global trends, and presently stand at roughly 60% in this region of pre-pandemic levels. So more or less is mirroring the overall air transport reduction. But I wish to commend the Latin America states for their resilience and responsiveness in the face of the pandemic. And in particular, I would like to recall the new regional air cargo liberalization agreement to bolster vaccine transport and long-term recovery across America and Latin America, developed by LACAC and supported by ICAO's regional office of Lima and Mexico City. This agreement establishes, you know, of course, expanded the 7th freedom traffic rights, allowing airlines from one LACAC state to provide all cargo services between the two other signatory states without restrictions on routes and the capacity. This will not only help increase efficiency of vaccine distribution, but in the longer term should enable air cargo to play an even greater role in a regional economic recovery and development. And I want to stress that this is a great example that in several occasions I've mentioned encouraging other regions to proceed in the same direction. So congratulations to Latin American member states. Now, the significant downturns still being withstood in global and regional air travel continue to present severe liquidity strains to companies and suppliers, and across the full extent of the transport and the tourism value chain. ICAO, therefore, should expect to encounter a range of challenges as travel begins to return to normal. And the ICAO Council Aviation Recovery Task Force, known as CART, has been proactively considering these challenges. Just a month ago, the Council adopted the new Phase 3 amendments to the CART's takeoff guidelines and recommendations, which you will recall were originally issued in June 2020. When the pandemic was started, the Council immediately reacted, also adopting new working methods in order to have the first round of recommendations already issued in June 2020, a second round in November, and now last month we issued the third phase. I would say that following the emergence of the newest virus variants, the vaccine rollouts and other innovation to battle COVID-19, this latest phase of CART's guidance or recommendations has targeted specific issues related to states' multilateral risk management strategies. The last package of CART recommendations and the guidance therefore actively supports the creation of public health travel corridors. And I want to stress, I will mention later, this concept, to promote safe and efficient global vaccine distribution and the facilitation of multilateral air cargo air services, as I mentioned before in Latin America with good progress, and encourages to stabilize COVID-19 testing, COVID-19 testing certificates for secure international use. And this will be for sure a key element for a restart during the next summer. The CART recommendations also include updated aircrew vaccination considerations. And that's very important in order to give relevance to vaccination of aircrew to support, of course, traveling and to support the restart and the recovery of air transport. But also safety priorities relating to sectorial recovery and an encouragement for national civil aviation and transport officials to advocate more vigorously for air transport, public health, and economic priorities. Taken together, the latest Phase 3 adjustments have been strategized under 3 key areas of priorities. The first of these is the establishment of national and regional risk management strategies to gradually open air routes based on mutually recognized public health measures. And as I mentioned before, this is a key element in order to assess, on the basis of assessment of epidemiological risk of member states, but on the basis of implementation of risk-based measures in accordance with the CART recommendations, is possible to open public health transport corridors. And this is already a reality in several regions, and I encourage member states to go in this direction until the full vaccination availabilities will not be in front of us. Success here will largely depend on national decision makers taking fuller account of the transport's role as an enabler and a multiplier of economic resilience and recovery. To that end, we should recall the CART Phase 3 recommendation 20 is the, let's say, latest, but I would say also the most important recommendation of CART recommendations. These recommendations call for member states to ensure that ICAO's CART guidance is taken into consideration by the wider state administration and informed decision-making process on national recovery planning. This is relevant because the political commitment to put at the highest level of priority international aviation in the recovery plan of the member states is important for the recovery, for the economic recovery of member states. And this is not a matter of competence of civil aviation authorities. It's not a matter of only competence of the civil aviation authority. It's a matter of a political willingness to put aviation on top of the priorities that are in front of them. So the first area I mentioned of CART priorities, the risk measurement approach to strategize the risks. The second area for CART priority concerns the possibility of profound long-term implications for traditional transport business models and operations post-pandemic. The accelerating digitization of the sector will be a key factor here, but just an important will be the higher passengers' expectations for healthier and more sustainable travel options. These transformations could lead to new types of travel products and pricing, and new approaches to network and fleet management with cascading implications for travel and tourism markets and suppliers. Just to mention that more and more frequently, we are now obliged to have these virtual events replacing the meeting in person that are so important for the networking and direct contacts, and they will not disappear. But we can consider that for the future, becoming more familiar with this kind of tools, these tools can remain for a while and could be also increased, the use could be increased. That meaning that some implication on air travel, we could have some implication on air travel. And the third key area of CART priority concerns the need for us to continue to effectively coordinate, share information, and learn together from COVID-19. This is the lesson, the most important to say, lesson that we learn from COVID-19. ICAO was the first that abandoned this, the traditional practices and rules in organizing meetings and decided to work more closely together with the regional organizations, with the industry representatives, with other international organizations. Just to mention that several of the participants today are members of the CART, are not just observers, are actively participating in the CART. And this is a new way of saying that we learn working all together. In emergency conditions, ICAO Council decided that new methods of working methods had to be adopted. Now, I was saying that all these activities are presently improving overall air transport crisis preparedness. And as we work together on them, we are helping to ensure the sector's future economic resilience and environmental sustainability, ultimately enabling more efficient operations. ICAO and its member states clearly recognize that the COVID-19 pandemic is not only a health crisis, it is also an economic, of course, and a financial crisis, presenting governments with very difficult trade-offs in terms of the health, economic, and the social priorities concerned. While public health is and must remain the overriding priority for civil societies, the critical role played by air transport in crisis responses and recovery must not be underestimated. Global supply chains, emergency and humanitarian responses, and the swift distribution of vaccines are strongly rely on the safe and reliable air services which we all work to help realize. Beyond that, seamless air connectivity permitting the safe and efficient movement of people, goods, and services also has far-reaching cross-cutting impacts on other industry sectors, and therefore on overall national and regional economic growth and prosperity. And I wish to announce that all these issues and others will be on the forefront of the discussions at the high-level conference on COVID-19, which ICAO is now scheduled for this October. This will be a high-level conference at the ministerial level in plenary with safety and facilitation streams that are all those items related to the implication of COVID-19. Our goal with this event will be to generate the political will needed to confront COVID-19 through effective multilateral action and to establish formal commitments supporting the safe and efficient recovery of civil aviation and its increased long-term resilience and sustainability. We rely very much on the success of this event. We hope, of course, that, and we are also planning to have this event partially in person. It's too early to establish so, to decide so, but this will be a great sign, of course, with an hybrid event, because we must be prepared that hybrid events will characterize our future events for a while. I was saying we rely very much on this event because we consider that is absolutely fundamental, a political commitment at level of ministers for their economic, financial, and social recovery to rely on aviation, on international aviation. I wish also to mention some additional priorities that we must pay very careful attention to going forward, concern the need for greater levels of membership and cooperation under the ICAO framework for infectious disease preparedness. This has been an important key element also for the work of the CART, and the continuing need for pilots and other skilled personnel to meet their licensing and accreditation requirements, and the potential safety risk we may face as airline, airports, and navigation service providers and their business to restart major operations in condition of economic hardship. Over 500,000 passengers are still taking to South American skies each week. And our core commitment in support of civil aviation safety, efficiency, and security cannot be wavered. Last month, the ICAO Council concluded its 122nd session, where the CAR-3 phase, where global amendments were endorsed, and significant progress has also continued in areas concerning CORSIA and aviation offsetting, the integration of remotely piloted aircraft systems into the international transport regulatory framework, a new structure of the ICAO cybersecurity activities, the adoption of a new declaration of gender equality, among others, and many, many others, giving a clear sign that notwithstanding the priority that has been imposed by COVID-19 pandemic, normal business, let's call it this way, continues at ICAO in a different framework and a different organization, because international transport must be supported constantly in all the domains. And of course, the 222nd session has been just mentioned, brought also to the appointment of the new Secretary General, Mr. Juan Salazar, Director General of Civil Aviation Colombia. And I wish you very much to welcome him for his appointment, and he will take office on the 1st August of 2021. So quite very soon. Well, I mentioned these updates to help remind us that even as the pandemic has brought much of air transport to a halt, the business international aviation still continues, and in a manner which is bringing our community together as never before at both global and regional level. I also wish to assure you that when the vaccine have done their work and the shadow of COVID-19 is lifted, people everywhere will take the skies again to explore and to learn and to trade via the unique international connections by which civil aviation brings so many peoples and culture together. I believe that my intervention has been a little bit longer than planned. In a certain way, I took the time that was let's say, gain with the anticipation start, but it's been a pleasure to participate with you today. Unfortunately, and I wish to ask your forgiveness, because I will not be able to stay for the whole event. But with this, I wish to conclude my intervention for my intervention, for your attention, for your attention. And I wish you a very engaging and a productive event. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sciacchitano. And now I would like to give the word to Mr. Luis Felipe de Oliveira, who is at the moment. He's the Director General of ACI, and he's our next key speaker. Please, Mr. de Oliveira, the audience is yours.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure talk after Mr. Salvatore, the president of ICAO, with his insights and the good inputs in our industry. But I would like to thank you first for Mr. Juan Carlos Salazar for the invitation to participate here today, and also Dr. Kostas Iatrou for inviting me for the meeting today. I'm pleased to say that I'm joining you from the sunny Miami in my first business trip of the year. When I was talking, I am now talking from the Miami airport after a business meet with Mr. Sola, the CEO of the airport. As you know, Miami is very well connected with Latin America, and a lot of people know Miami as a capital of Latin America because of the connections that Miami has with Latin America and the connections to the world as well. But it's good to be here and good to see some movement on our airports as well. I'm happy to be here with the representatives from the industry and governments to discuss the challenges and opportunities facing the Latin American transport sector post-COVID-19 pandemic. And on behalf of ACI World, I would like to provide you the airport perspective. Under normal circumstances, I would give this speech in a podium and looking at you, spotting great colleagues and professionals in the auditorium. I would love to see you all and feel in person your presence equally this year, as these virtual meetings are just a mere substitute the human contact. However, we need to gear ourselves with the patients and continue with the Zoom meetings for a short while longer. As I address you today, we are all feeling the impacts of a very different world. A little over a year ago, the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus outbreak a global pandemic. Our lives have changed completely, and we are all eagerly waiting for the time to have our freedom to be in the skies again. However, I think it's safe to say that we are now officially entering in a new phase of the pandemic. There are plenty of reasons for optimism. Vaccinations have increased significantly in the recent weeks. A few countries have started easing some of the lockdowns, and in some parts of the world, failing infection statistics show that immunization is beginning to make a positive impact. As we are speaking today, Australia and New Zealand completely opened their skies for the citizens of the Australia and New Zealand to connect their countries easily, and we hope to see these travel corridors more and more around the world. Although we are in the right track, the current pace of 12 million daily vaccinations is still far where you need to be in order to achieve a significant level of global immunity by the midsummer. With some places still waiting for their first dose, the effort to beat the COVID-19 in a large part now race against the clock. There is an urgent push for inoculate as many people as possible over the next few months, including in remote areas and hard to reach places. Nevertheless, we continue to see progress towards the recovery across the world. With the biggest vaccination campaign in the history underway, more than 870 million doses were administered across 152 countries. And new vaccines by additional manufacturers coming to the market, there is now a clear light at the end of the tunnel. The current pandemic has made it clear how vulnerable the aviation industry can be to external shocks and events we cannot control. But there are some aspects we can control, which have always been a top priority for us in the past and in the future, ensuring a highest level of safety and security for our passengers and operations. The industry has not lost the sign of this. Safety remains our top priority, and safe and secure aviation system will be crucial component of the global recovery. These times test us as a people and a business leaders. New challenges will most likely continue to present themselves, and we will continue to learn and adapt to this never yet experienced situation. And we must continue to think outside of the box to find new and innovative solutions. The crisis and the impacts on the global aviation activities have brought into focus the need to continue to work collaboratively as an industry and the efforts to build back better and continue to prepare for the future. An excellent example of this establishment of ICAO Council Aviation Recovery Task Force, the CART, already mentioned by the Mr. President, which enables collaboration among the governments and between the governments and the industry, which is vital to ensure the synergy and essential to restoring the air connectivity and passenger confidence in air travel. ACI welcomes the new Phase 3 updates to the takeoff guidance document issued on the last 12th of March by the CART and adopted by ICAO Council. The update guidance will provide immeasurable assistance in promoting the harmonization of the measures being introduced around the world to facilitate the restart of air travel, which allow aviation to be a key engine driving global economic recovery. To support the global coordination of the new measures and underpin the recovery, ACI created the Airport Health Accreditation Program, which is supported by ICAO. Last month, the AHA Airport Health Accreditation Program reached a new record of applicants. More than 600 participants, which represent about 70% of the global passenger traffic. And this is a significant achievement considering that our 2,000 members comprise 98.5% of the global passenger traffic. In Latin America, we have to date 67 contracts signed and 57 airports have been accredited and more yet to come. The Airport Health Accreditation Program continues to meet the needs of our members and demonstrate the airport's commitment to delivering the objectives of set for the CART takeoff guidance. It enables airports to demonstrate to the passengers, staff, regulators, and governments that we are prioritizing the health and safety in a measurable manner, while also ensuring the harmonization between ICAO global guidance and industry implementation. As we gear up from the new normal, airports will continue to face challenges, some of which are local, but many that are globally felt, such as capacity and resource constraints, infrastructure development, climate change, and changing nature of the airport business, financial models, and regulatory regimes. The world's airports, include those in the region, need to consider the future of aviation and how to best build a resilient and sustainable industry. The future of aviation depends on our dedication to the cause and sustainability, and ACI will continue to work with our global aviation sector stakeholders so that we can be a strong part of the solution. I know you all share our deep commitment to making Latin America a major contributor to the world's aviation industry. Your support and leadership are essential for the airport industry's success. While ACI is dedicated to advancing the collective interests of the world's airports and the communities they serve, I believe that the best way to do this is through the cooperation with our partners. We must take a whole of industry approach to collaboration to ensure the industry can grow together. The next few months will be crucial in the battle against this historic crisis. Although we have made significant progress, there is still a lot to do not now about this disease. While the situation remains volatile and challenging, my message is keep moving forward. The distance toward the finish line will depend on our ability to stay focused and disciplined. We have every reason to have confidence that we will win this battle. However, we must remain vigilant and keep the current pace of the progress. We need to continue get the vaccinations effectively and equitably distributed to the public. And above all, we must continue the effort of international solidarity and collaboration. I hope see you all soon in person, and I wish you all a good and fruitful dialogue today. Stay well, stay healthy, and in good spirits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. G. Oliveira. And so with this, we finish the presentation for our key speakers. I would like to thank both of you. And now, in order to continue with our program, I would like to present Mr. Jeff Poole, President of Hermes Air Transport Organization, who will be the moderator of our leaders panel. Mr. Poole, please proceed.
Thank you, Jorge, and welcome everybody. I will keep my opening remarks very short because we have already had an excellent introduction from Salvatore as President of the ICAO Council, and of course from Felipe on behalf of ACI World. I'd just like to add my personal thanks to the organizer, everybody involved in the organization of what, for me, is a very timely and topical event, particularly given the overall impact of COVID-19 on the air transport sector and the specific impact on aviation in this region. Now, we all know, and it's been mentioned, that aviation and the broader sort of travel and tourism industry is a key and critical enabler to economic and social benefits and livelihoods. And connectivity by air is particularly essential given the geography of the Latin American region. And as was mentioned by Felipe, most importantly is supporting at the present time the distribution of vaccines, which will help us all recover. But as was also mentioned, many decisions affecting the recovery of aviation from this COVID-19 situation are being taken outside of the industry and by different parts of governments that we're not used to dealing with. So that's going to be a challenge for us. But over and above that, we do need to build back better. As has been mentioned, there will be new business models, new processes. We will need to take better account of issues such as sustainability, inclusion and diversity and so on, and not simply try to rebuild the past, which is no longer relevant to us. So today is about resilience and efficiency of the air transport sector through leadership and cooperation. Now that is almost a truism, because I think if we were to take a poll of the 100 or so participants on this call, everybody would say, yes, of course we need resilience, efficiency, and we need to cooperate, collaborate, and we need leadership. But what I'd like to get out of the session today is, what does that actually mean? What does it look like? And most importantly, how do we achieve it? As an aviation industry, we've been advocating for a long time, but we've singularly failed to create single aviation skies, for example, in regions such as Latin America. And we've always been on the back foot. So how do we now change our approach and take that leadership and cooperation forward? So in the next hour and 20 minutes or so, we have an excellent panel. I will introduce them as we go through, but covering the government aspects, the different sectors of the industry, and indeed the communication and media side as well. So I think we've got a very good package of panelists for you today that will enable us, I hope, to get deeper into these issues. Those of you that know me will know that I have a very strong focus on deliverables and making change. So what I would like to get out of this panel at the end is a specific set of recommendations on what we do in this region to make the difference that needs to be made. And hopefully some commitments from the panelists themselves, as well as a sense of how do we get commitment from everybody else. I'm delighted to move to our first panelist at this point. We'll go through a process of allowing each of our panelists to speak for 3 to 5 minutes each, and then we'll engage in an interactive discussion. And I know we have some excellent panelists here who will hopefully cross-challenge, ask each other questions or comment on what they've said. So hope that will make my life easier and hopefully make it a much more entertaining event for the all of the participants as well. So I move to the first panelist of today. I'm delighted, he's already spoken to you. I'm delighted to introduce Juan Carlos Salazar as the Director General of Civil Aviation for Colombia. And as Salvatore mentioned, soon to become the new Secretary General of ICAO. So Juan Carlos, I'd like to invite you to speak, and hopefully this panel will add a few action items for your to-do list when you become the Secretary General. So over to you, Juan Carlos, please, to make your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. I believe that you have been spot on the challenge that we have towards the recovery. Leadership, cooperation, and good communication are essential elements in order to restore the confidence of the traveling public, of the authorities, health authorities and local governments, and facilitate the restart of aviation and the recovery of air connectivity throughout our countries and our region and internationally. That precisely has been the experience that we had firsthand in Colombia, when the president of Colombia took the decision to suspend commercial air transport. Immediately we started to work with different authorities. It was very clear that this decision was going much beyond the normal air transport or the normal transport sector. The emergency that was declared and the extent of this emergency in our country and around the world immediately demonstrated that it was necessary, especially to work with other actors. And in that sense, our first task was to look at what internationally was being done. We had the opportunity in Colombia to interact with other governments, with other regulators in Asia, in Europe, and even in our region, to see how they were reacting and how they were implementing some measures. And in that sense, we built two things. We built our own recovery plan for Colombia, and we built that working with health authorities and working and showing it to other stakeholders like local governments in our country. And we built our health protocols as applied to air travel, first domestic air travel and then international air travel. I believe that Colombia was one of the first countries in the region to have a complete health protocol, which we again validated and discussed with other peer authorities in the region. We have many good working sessions in Latin America with the leadership of ICAO, and it was in parallel to the work that the Council Aviation Recovery Task Force was doing. So this was a very interesting exercise what we did as a civil aviation system. We had very important or deep discussions in ICAO headquarters, led by the Council of ICAO, with the participation of the industry, but at the same time with good participation from the regions. And there was a continuous loop to give feedback on the discussions that the Council of ICAO was doing through CART. The result of this in the case of Colombia is that we had a mature recovery plan. We had a mature health protocol, which we basically took like 3 or 4 months to socialize, to make it well known by the traveling public, to make it well known by the local authorities that were opposing the reactivation of commercial air travel, and to fine-tune these protocols and this recovery plan with the Ministry of Health in Colombia. The result is that within 3 weeks, from 1st September to 24th September, basically, we were able to reactivate air transport, domestic air transport, up to 90% of the routes that we used to have pre-pandemic times. And then we also were able to move very, very quickly with some international routes in those countries that did not restrict international air travel. The Ministry of Health in Colombia and in general, the local governments have been very supportive of air connectivity, of maintaining air connectivity in our country. Even though we are now going through a new peak, third peak in the numbers of COVID in our country, and right now we are in a very challenging situation. The fact is that having a very strict health protocols, having a plan that has been socialized and well known by local governments and health authorities, allow us to have partners outside civil aviation authorities or transport sector in general that understand the importance of air connectivity in a country like Colombia, and have confidence that the high level of health protocols are sufficient to guarantee that air transport does not pose an additional risk or health risk that need to implement some additional restrictions to what the health protocol requires. So in a nutshell, my message here is that cooperation has been essential in our recovery. And that cooperation, I see it as essential in order to speed up the international air travel recovery. ICAO Council has been delivering a tremendous work through the 3 CART documents. And the challenge now lays in implementing those recommendations and transferring those good recommendations into more trust built with different governments around the world, with health authorities around the world, in order to speed up the recovery of international air travel, which nowadays still continue to be very affected. So that's what I will say as an introduction, and I will give you the floor back. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Great, thank you, Juan Carlos, and thank you for a very compelling and positive picture of the situation in your country. It's good now to move on and look at the region as a whole. So I would like to invite Jaime Binder, the Secretary General of LACAC, to make his opening remarks, please. Jaime, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeff, for giving me the floor. It is a great pleasure to be here and to share ideas along with colleagues and friends from the region. And thanks Hermes and the Aeronautical Authority of Colombia for the invitation to participate in such an important meeting. It is such a challenge to speak after Juan Carlos Salazar, who has provided such excellent information so far. I would like to share some general ideas in order to keep some background. I would like to start by highlighting some characteristics of the crisis that I think everyone would agree on. First of all, this is a global crisis. It is important to point that out because it demonstrates we need global solutions. However, despite this being common knowledge, governments still apply unilateral measures. In other words, several states have a nationalistic approach rather than a multilateral and international approach to face this crisis. The coronavirus crisis is also multi-sectoral since several sectors of the economy and our societies are affected by the pandemic at the same time. However, aviation and tourism have been receiving the worst hits from this crisis. The main issue is that Latin America and Caribbean governments cannot rescue or support every single sector of the economy. In general, the Latin American aviation sector has not received the same support unlike other latitudes, such as the United States or Europe. We are facing a multidimensional crisis because it covers several dimensions such as health, economy, culture, politics, and so on. As a result, our societies demonstrate a lack of confidence. This places a lot of pressure on all the institutions, especially public institutions, and on politics as well. In addition, the level of uncertainty has been increased. We have more information regarding the virus now in 2021 than we did at the beginning of the pandemic. However, nobody can predict in an accurate or reliable way the end of the crisis, maybe because predictions in the past have failed us. Having said that, I believe we are in the middle of the perfect storm in our region. The most realistic solution would be obtaining herd immunity by vaccinations. Unfortunately, the vaccinations campaigns are not as fast as we would like it to be around the world. I am proud of what ICAO has been doing to recover our sector. Maybe the most successful and innovative decision of ICAO was the creation of the Council Aviation Recovery Task Force, CART. CART should be an innovation case study at the Academy in the near future. It should be noted that in a short period of time, CART produced useful recommendations and guidelines with the participation of all the stakeholders, including other international organizations and the private sector. CART is the place where we continually discuss global solutions for our sector during the crisis. It should be noted that CART adopted principles to guide its recommendations. The first principle is protect people. Protect people adopting harmonized but flexible measures. And that's a common effort from states and the industry. However, the government continues to adopt unilateral measures in an unorganized manner regionally and globally, such as quarantines and border closures. And they did that in the name of the same principle, protect people. That sounds like a contradiction. Indeed, it is understandable that governments are concerned with protecting the citizens that make up each country, which disregards the fact that no country will be able to get out of this crisis on its own. What are some explanations for this contradiction? Briefly, I will say there are three reasons why it's hard to change the previous scenario. Without enough vaccines in Latin America and the Caribbean, our government used an archaic tool to prevent the spread of the virus, especially the mutations of the virus, quarantines and border closures. In general, when the virus and its mutations spread, the public opinion places a higher value on protecting people's health rather than on maintaining our economies. And finally, the decisions are no longer taken by the Aeronautical Authority, but by the Minister of Health, which reinforced the previously mentioned issues. Is there another way of approaching this? The answer is yes, by following the recommendations from CART. Otherwise, the archaic measures of quarantines in the long run will be worse than the disease itself because it directly affects people's quality of life. I know the trade-off between protecting our health and maintaining our economy stable is a precarious balance. Our task is to tell people that flying is safe, that it transport people and not viruses, and that if commercial aviation stops, the long-term recovery will take too long. For the future, we need sustainable aviation or green aviation by using new and innovative technology in order to facilitate the transportation of the people in a safe manner, but at the same time, keeping affordable prices for the passenger. That is really important from Latin America and the Caribbean passengers. This is slightly less complicated than squaring the circle. In my opinion, if everybody cooperates, we could overcome the crisis and rebuild better aviation for all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for quite a comprehensive view there, and an interesting set of recommendations on a different approach, which we'll come back to later in this panel. We now move on to the different industry sectors, starting with the airlines, and I'd therefore like to invite José Ricardo Botelho, the Executive Director and CEO of ALTA, to take the floor and give us your comments, please, José Ricardo.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, all the attendees. Thank you, Jeff. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank and congratulate Hermes and the Civil Authority of Colombia for this event. Before I go further, I would like to congrats Juan Carlos for the new role and wish for him the best, because we all know his commitment with this sector, and this is, I believe that is going to be a great time to work together. When you talk about the subject that we have here, I like to highlight the title that we have: Resilience and Efficiency Through Leadership and Cooperation. Resilience is just because I would say that this sector right now, with all that we have passed through, we are survivors right now, because this crisis I've never seen, and I've never read something that could be worse than what we have right now. Efficiency, this word is very important, because the whole industry, each airlines, and I would say, if Rafael allows me, each airport is doing something different to survive at this time, and doing something different in order to do something together, because we have to change our mindset. Leadership, it's time to congrats, as Jaime said, it's time to congrats ICAO, because years and years of working in this sector, I've never seen a moment that we could sit all together. And when you say all together, we put together Mr. Salvatore, and congrats for that. Since the first beginning, the governments, we put together the industry, and we talk about the industry, we put together the airports, the airlines, to find out a way out of that. So, and cooperation, this is cooperation. I've never seen something like that. So under the umbrella of ICAO, what in the group card, we had the document that could actually lead the whole sector. We know, as Jaime said, that unfortunately some governments are doing something unilateral, and we have our job as industry, and also as a member of this CART group, is keep working to show that we have to follow the what we see over there. Especially, I would say that especially in our region. Why that? Because the core of the connectivity in Latin America and Caribbean is the aviation. We don't have roads like in Europe. We have a lot of islands. We have long distance in this region. So keep this sector alive is very important for the whole Latin American Caribbean. And I would say that harmonization is fundamental for all of us. Unfortunately, we see some quarantines, we see some unilateral rules, and I would like to keep the idea that why that? How could we know that 99% of the decision, and I believe that you're going to talk here in some point, is not under the umbrella of the civil authority. But how could we work together to take the information that we have for the others authorities, especially for the health authorities? And I'm saying that because we have met each other in so many events. So we know where we are. We know that we are, and I'm saying we know with the permission of the authorities here as well, because we know as industry, as authority, that we are not vectors. We know that we have protocols at the airport, in the cabin of the airlines. Our crew is responsible with the whole protocols. So we know that this sector is safe, but still we suffer for other measures that can be done for another authority. Maybe is the time that, as we have done with CART, is the time that together under the umbrella of ICAO or even CLAC, Juan or ICAO, we could work with the authorities in order to take or be sure that we can give or deliver the information for the health authority in order to avoid closing skies and quarantines, unnecessary rules as well. So with these open words, and knowing that we know the situation in our region, we know that when you talk about the airlines or this sector, we are talking about a chain of industry that has been impacted, like tourism, traveling tourism, and this is terrible for some countries, like in some countries where the sector is responsible for more than 15% of the GDP. So it's time to resume the flights. It's time with responsibility, reopen the skies with antigen, PCR, whatever, with travel pass or any other document, like we have done with yellow fever for years. We have been doing this for years in Latin America with the yellow fever. We just go with that card. So if you have technology to do something different, good. Let's go together to try it. So I'd like to finish my open speech. Just say that congrats again, congrats Juan, congrats Kostas for this event like that. Because once I read that when you are in the darkest moment of the night, it means that the dawn, the light is closer than ever. We have right now the vaccine. It's time to follow the vaccine. Vaccination is the word. In this meanwhile, let's keep working together as fighters, as we have been doing, in order to resume the flights and reopen the skies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. While you have the floor, could you just say something about the health of the airline industry in the region? The COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating for the industry. How much damage has been caused to airlines in the region? Is it naive to believe that the airline industry can simply provide the capacity and rebuild quickly the international and regional travel, or is it going to take much longer for the industry itself to get well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish I could have some good words at this subject, but actually what we see right now is that the COVID hit the airlines very, very hard. And unfortunately, while some other regions, or even in North America, they have financial support for recovery, in Latin America, in Caribbean, we haven't seen that. So, and what happened was that the airlines, we had to do some homeworks, and was done. This homework was done, like reorganizing the airlines. Each one was doing its own process, but also we counted with the authorities. Since we couldn't get the financial support, we counted with the authorities in order to change some rules, you know, and that was very, very important for the airlines. But the way that we see right now is that, can you imagine that when you talk about the international flights in our region, we have a drop of 72%. Just to give you an idea what is that, the international FME, the International Monetary Fund, I believe in English, that said that our region would drop 7% this year. And the impact of that, just 7%, we can see in the social problem in our countries. You can see with jobs that have been lost in our region. But can you imagine when we talk about 72% of drop? It's huge. It's too much for any airline. That's why I said that events like that, they are very important, because this is the opportunity to show for the authorities and the partner, so the stakeholders, if you have to take a decision that is not in the cards, that your government, your health minister is saying that you should take it, please talk with the industry, because we are here to help, to see it again, and try to rebuild that, because the impact was tremendous in our region.
Okay, thank you very much. And we move to a different part of the industry sector now, to airports. And I'm really delighted to invite Rafael Echevarne, the Director General of ACI-LAC, to give us your comments. And you know, the airports in the region have been devastated as much as the airlines. So I'd be grateful to hear your views. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you very much to the organizers. Indeed, the airports have been hit as any other part of the industry. We saw, as you know, last year a reduction in 500 million fewer passengers than in 2019. That actually had an impact of airports making $7 billion less than in 2019. And of course, the importance here is that those amounts were going to be used for the development of infrastructure, which is extremely important in our part of the world. This year, we expect 400 million passengers less than in 2019, and about $6,000 million less than in 2019. I'm not going to go into the percentage in reduction in passenger numbers, because that's already been said, but just want to point out that we are running at two different speeds here. Of course, the difference between domestic and international, that's well known all around the world, but also the difference between countries, whereas Mexico is already catching up on traffic to 2019, almost 2019 levels in domestic passengers, okay? And about 30% reduction in international traffic with respect to 2019. The rest of the region are way below. I mean, if we subtract Brazil and Mexico from the equation, the region is approximately 70% down in terms of traffic numbers on 2019. So you can see the fact that indeed we are running at two different speeds. Important to point out that Mexico is the only country that we are aware in the world that has not imposed any restrictions, any requirements to enter the country or exit the country. And I think that that is, of course, reflected in the passenger numbers. Of course, they do have problems, with COVID spread in the country and so on and so forth. But I think that one of the issues that we've had in this part of the world is that new players have been playing a very important role, mainly the health authorities. And we suspect that these new players that have been suddenly thrown into the limelight have not been fully aware of the importance of aviation for the region. This is not just for the rich people. Aviation is not for the wealthy in Latin America. Aviation is not only important for the tourists that come from North America or Europe. Aviation is absolutely fundamental for the social and economic development of our countries. And as I say, it seems that we still have some work to do to convey that message to the governments and some of the players that, as I say, have been thrown into the limelight. Now, obviously, we have to work together. That's something that has been said. And I think that we should congratulate ourselves in the industry for the airlines, the airports, CANSO, and ICAO, of course, working together. I think that the cooperation has been fantastic. We keep on, sending news, press releases and what have you to the region. But it is absolutely essential to understand that indeed harmonization has been nowhere to be seen in the region when it comes to governments talking to each other in terms of the requirements for traveling. That hasn't happened. And it is not happening as we talk. I mean, the hardest bit of this crisis, of this pandemic, has been the development of the vaccines. And yet here we are today, still talking about corridors and green and yellow and amber traffic lights. I mean, it is incredible. Talking about technology. So we believe that technology can be the biggest ally to overcome this pandemic. And the important thing about technology, the way we see it in the airports, is that all the technology has already been developed. You don't need anything new. The technology is already there. And some countries in our region have been extremely forward thinking, like for example, Uruguay in the use of technology. You can enter Uruguay as a non-Uruguayan without having to talk to an immigration officer. And yet some other countries are still wondering if that is a good idea or not. Okay, the technology is there. We have to take advantage of that. And of course, finally, I would just say in these opening remarks that now is a time to challenge many of those long established views and norms about the string regulatory regime that regiments our industry. Now is the time. If now is not the time, it will never be. I mean, we have a situation, as was mentioned by Jaime Binder, the strict protocols for flying within the region, the fact that an airline from, say, Chile cannot fly within, I don't know, I'm just going to make it up, within Mexico, now is a time to challenge all those long-established views. And I think that now is the great opportunity. So those would be my first comments. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Rafael. And now, last but not least of the industry sectors, air traffic management, and pass over to my good friend Javier Vanegas. Javier, the air traffic management sector has been devastated as well, and clearly that's a very significant financial impact on the organization. So could you give us your view on the impact and your comments on the way forward?
Well, thank you, Jeff. It was nice seeing you again. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It was great. It's an honor being here with all of you. And Juan Carlos, congratulations on your appointment as Secretary General of ICAO. I'm pretty sure we're all going to continue working together in better of the industry. Well, it's not a secret. We all said it. Our colleagues from before have said it. But we came together to make it today a reality. So we know that the aviation industry is committed to offering critical and now regular services throughout the COVID pandemic. This includes enabling the safe passage of vital repatriation, which is when we started, cargo flights through global airspace, delivery of medical support worldwide, including the COVID-19 vaccines, which we now, through the Cadena initiative, we are supporting now the delivery of COVID vaccines through scheduled flights. The industry is ensuring that the services are available in all the regions across the world. This is critical in making sure that the key service and goods get to where they are needed the most, as quickly and as efficiently as possible. It is true that not only the air navigation side, but the entire industry has suffered. On the air navigation side, we have lost, some of the ANSPs were forced to reduce 25% of their staff. And by meaning reducing 25%, not sending them to vacations, but they actually, losing their jobs. So how can we manage to make this, not to make this such of a risk when we start getting operations involved? That's something that we are working, and Jeff, you made a line which actually made a lot of sense, which is how does this look like? And through this panel, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to answer that question. And knowing you for a long time and learning from you for a while, for many years, I know you're going to make this happen and make it a reality for all of us to be committed. We have been working on providing policy and framework guidance to ensure that the emergence of the ATM industry from the current pandemic to a stronger and more resilient industry, which is, we have been seeing that. When we started, if you recall, when we started with this pandemic, the sector, each sector within our industry was pulling and guarding, if you will, their own industry. And this was normal. But we learned quickly that we could not create a long-term damage to the aviation system and avoid one company's solution being another company's problem. And that actually resounded very quickly when we started into the crisis, and we started cooperating and collaborating among each other. Actually, many have said about the car crate initiative. As CANSO, we also support, and as many of us support this industry as well. We've been working also on the within the CANSO priorities. We included enhancing the public perception of ATM. We are making sure that we have continuity of the business. We have ensuring good regulatory practices as well, exchanging best practices from another ANSPs to the region. First of all, the ANSP of Italy, ENAV, when we started, they share how they were doing the rostering with others. And that was before the pandemic was actually a big hit here in the region. So those type of best practices, we've been working together. We've been supporting the operational standards to enhance ATM performance, promoting airspace modernization and enhance efficiency, and to accommodate challenges of new entrants. What does this mean? Many of the ANSPs, and again, thank you, Venezuela. INAC just joined CANSO, so thank you for that. We just sent out the publication today. But Venezuela has been working very diligently to offer free airspace, free routing, of the airspace, as well as Colombia, as well as Brazil has been working a lot on that free airspace to reduce the airlines' burden and to make sure we get those direct crossings in the industry. Many of the ANSPs also are doing that. Cuba is also working big on that. Central America. So a lot of the ANSPs, Argentina is working very hard on making sure and providing that support that the customers, our customers, the airlines, and many other participants of the air traffic industry, stakeholders, can benefit from. We're actually working with the industry. Cadena has been a big example, and thank you, Jeff. You started that when you were in CANSO as Director General. Now Cadena, thanks to the best practices of Cadena, is actually a global initiative. It's called Cadence. The last two words is for cooperation excellence. So those are, when you say, what does it look like? All the support and all the work that we have been doing throughout these years is actually catching up during this crisis. We have also been working with many of the CANSO associate members like Area Metro Micronav to support the air navigation service provider on keep on continuing that service and enhancing that service as we speak. we found out that the CANSO benchmarking report that we published last year, it includes data from 57 ANSPs responsible for managing approximately 65% of the world's air traffic. The data covers between 2014 to 2018, but the report showed that within those years, it clearly shows the strength of air navigation service providers' performances as reflected in productivity gains that extended for much more of a decade. So that we're going to continue to offer that support to the industry and stakeholders. What it's actually caught my attention pretty much was we understand that this was during the March report last month that we the CANSO ATM traffic analysis report that we do together with Arian. There were 2.4 million flights operated globally in March 2021, last month. This represents a significant increase in daily average flight numbers over the previous month, right? With globally daily flight numbers increasing by over 20% from an average of 64,000 flights daily in February to 7,700 flights daily in March. But now, what caught my attention was, even though we have those great values and most of the regions saw a small but positive increase in March, South America had been consistently declining traffic volumes over the past 3 months and has fallen to negative 48% from January 2020 volumes. So that's something there that caught my attention quite a lot. And it's what our colleagues, Rafa just said it, what are we doing? What is the government doing? What are they putting those change on the aviation industry? I just recently I was fortunate enough to go into several flights, and no, it wasn't for business, but the way that we are communicating to public that we are safe is doing very well. Went to the airport, distancing, everything was very clear. When you boarded the plane, a lot of distancing, your cover mask. I mean, everyone was following protocols. So we have to trust from the public. I think we need the next step, and as mentioned by Rafa, we need to go into the government and say, listen, do not produce change and do not affect our industry as much. I know it has been challenging years for us, and it is encouraging to see that such commitment from all of us is there, the cart and everything that we're doing. So I just want to thank you and congratulate you for that. And over to you, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Javier. That's very, very helpful. And move on quickly to our final speaker for today, Jeff Peet, who is the Managing Director of ALA, América Latina Aeronautica. Jeff is in sort of looking not outside the industry, but has a broad view of the industry. So, Jeff, you've heard a lot today from the government side and from the industry side. Perhaps you give us the view from your unique perspective on the industry.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, there's a lot that has been said, and well, I read a lot about it. So even before I joined you today, I've been up to that. Well, thank you first to Aeronautica Civil de Colombia and Hermes for this great invitation. I take it very seriously because it's not very often that a journalist, even from the field of aviation, can sit with such important people that have so many important and key responsibilities within the industry. So thank you for that. I wanna basically, well, I'll take care of my weakness, which is communications. And in that respect, I would say that communications as technology, which is something Rafael Echevarne just pointed out very smartly, ought to be key to the recovery of the industry. As I said earlier, I read a lot about it. I have, you have that ability of listening to different strategies that governments that of all levels of it, national, regional, and local governments that have been very important at this time. And then you read from industry actors and airlines, of course, and civil aviation authorities and airports, and then I think there's a lot that has been done, a lot that has been very well done, but I would say, or I would like to show a bit of a proposal in terms of what communications can do during this time of crisis. And I think in that sense, there's a lot to be done in terms of defining, some common messaging and to try to take it to the farthest possible reach. The issue here to me, and seeing it at times, I try to see it from above, is how do we continue to present aviation as an unforgettable experience, considering that it has become difficult and might get even more complex. And in that sense, I think that there's a task in terms of defining key messages. And one thing is try to underline the role of aviation beyond and even before tourism. Rafael also touched on that. I mean, we have in the region one of the things that it's very perhaps very particular to Latin America. We speak the same language, or we sort of understand. All the countries understand each other, and at the same time, there's a common culture, there are common traditions, and all that, but there is a big difference in terms of how governments see aviation. They're more business friendly, governments, they're less business friendly. So, and that comes into, it's part of the equation. And when I say that we have to work in something beyond tourism, beyond this great unforgettable experience in terms of what you get to see for the first time, in terms of what you see to experience for the first time, I think the argument is how do we appeal to everybody? And in that sense, I think it was also discussed here earlier, the distribution of vaccines. And I also would like to underline the very important role that aviation, regardless of its almost complete grounding, has had in terms of humanitarian work, humanitarian flights, and be able to continue to provide assistance to people in need. Then there's the issue of connectivity, which is another big communications aspect in terms of we don't have the reality of Europe or the US, where you have different means of transportation that contest the role of aviation. Well, here it's in a much smaller scale. There are places from where you can only get from one end to the other by just air. And I think that's another key aspect. I think we have advanced quite a bit in terms of that, the connectivity, but people need to understand it better. And then the health safety issue in terms of how aviation has lived up to the to the problem, to the challenges that this epidemic has put before us in terms of, it is one of the safest, it is the healthiest way of traveling, it is the least to where, because of the technology that it's being used. And I think that's another thing that we need to underline. One would like to see maybe a health record card placed in the pocket of the seat in front of you to that extent. But what I mean is to really for people to understand to what extent aviation is a good partner of healthy lifestyles, of health authorities, that to such a big extent they have had such a say in terms of the development of aviation. Then sustainability. I think that one of the key aspects of aviation that has continued to be has continued to play a central role is the sustainability field, and how aviation has grasped this issue. I mean, regardless of the huge financial challenge, José, Ricardo was talking about that, and the growth expectations for this year from the IMF are quite low. But beyond that, I mean, aviation is still and will never stop being committed to its environmental goals. And I think that's another very, very important issue that should be shown, that should be manipulated by everybody in terms of conveying a message that it's going to help aviation. Then it's quite an ambitious, agenda, and in that respect also, I think aviation has succeeded in something that we see everyday failure. There's a broad consensus on the need for work in a better way to protect the environment. There's such a big agreement between all actors, and I think that's a key aspect that could be put forward in order to make the case for aviation, even at this time of a pandemic. And then I would like to finalize with our effort in terms of trying to define what comes next. And in that respect is this new normal that people are talking about. And there, aviation, I would say, from what readers might wanna know about the industry, is how does aviation takes this opportunity, this new normal, to try to start on the best, to choose the best path forward. And in that respect, we need to work in more, gender equality. Aviation must reflect the fact that more than 50% of the population of this world are women. And there's a weakness. The industry, you tend to see a lot of women, and you tend to think that there's a lot of equality in the industry, but there's a lot to be done still. Then more social responsibility. I think companies need to show more, need to be more proactive in those terms. More and more aviation, and there's a period of everybody is sort of forecasting a lot of consolidation, big companies merging and making greater companies. Well, the big companies of this world in other fields like mining, like all the extractive industries, for instance, they are doing more and more, and we need to think about that. And then more creative environmental technologies. And Rafael also mentioned what a difference this people-less technologies have made for the Carrasco Airport in Montevideo. I mean, it hasn't been, to the extent of the importance that it has had. And I think there's a fantastic example of how aviation is progressive. It's at the forefront, is always trying to embrace the newest and the best. And in that sense, I think there's a lot to be done, thinking of this new normal. And
Okay.
I think also, if the pandemic has shown something, and Juan Carlos was mentioning that earlier, is how much you have needed to face people, or how many people that did not belong in aviation before have come to play a key role in the sustainability, in the corporate business sustainability of the industry. And in that sense, I think in the future, one of the things that the industry has to do is define, very well define, other fields with which it can work. Health authorities cannot be foreign. As safety and security people became such a key part of the industry. Well, health and I guess people could sit down and decide which other fields could, advance any challenges that might come up in the future. So in a nutshell, I would say a commitment in terms of communications, a communications work center in common messaging where possible, and focusing on health, safety, how essential aviation is, connectivity, sustainability, and a well thought plan for a new normal. That's what I wanted to say. I want to thank you again for the opportunity on behalf of, as editor-in-chief of América Latina Aeronoticias. We're about to celebrate our first year. So I'm very grateful to you, and I thank also Rafael Echevarne and José Ricardo Botelho as we are their media partner, and for sure that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to all of the panelists for some fascinating insights there, covering a lot of ground. And it's quite obvious that whilst the industry is in very difficult circumstances, there are a lot of good initiatives going on which will help us get out of this, but equally there's a lot more still to be done. One of the obvious highlights that's been mentioned is the ICAO CART process. And we need to find a way of making that become embedded in everything moving forward, I believe. You've all spoken very positively about that. And in some senses, the CART process is kind of the vaccination for the air transport sector. We just need to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated with it. And one of the problems that we've had, I think, in air transport generally, is we talk a lot about these things, but when we have something like the ICAO CART process, it is only a set of recommendations and guidelines. And a number of you have commented already that this is not, different governments are going their own ways, never mind different parts of government going their own ways. So my question, I think, to you all, and perhaps we start with Juan Carlos and Jaime here, is how is there something additional we should be doing to make the CART process a huge success? Is that the way forward for the industry in terms of getting ourselves out of this potential crisis? So I throw the floor open to the panelists, please, for your comments.
Yes, Jeff, thank you very much for that question. I certainly agree on what many of the panelists have said and what you just have said, that we need now CART recommendations to be widely implemented. At the national level, I believe that each country is in a way making progress, their own progress, in order to reactivate air connectivity. In the case of Colombia, we are quite committed to implementing those recommendations and facilitate the recovery of air connectivity, which in our country is essential. But the international level, it's another ball game, I would say. In there, everyone has highlighted how the requirements are not yet well harmonized or well coordinated. And that is something in which the International Civil Aviation Organization can play an essential role, should play an essential role. You were mentioning not only coordination, but leadership is required. And the organization has demonstrated a tremendous leadership in preparing this document, these CART documents. Now, what is needed is the same leadership, the same commitment is required for the implementation of those. And I believe that that boils down to pragmatic things, to a pragmatic approach on, for example, how to implement specific health corridors, for example, which is one of the recommendations that is included in the card. And then systematic work of coordination among different states to start creating the web of international traffic. It will be a tremendous contribution in this very moment. That is exactly what is happening in our region. ICAO, the regional office, is leading some exercise in order for some states to recreate these health corridors and facilitate the international travel within our region, which is especially affected. So I believe that there is still much work to be done internationally. At the domestic level, I believe that each state is doing their own part according to their own risk assessment, and there are more progress, but the challenge there is at the international level.
Thank you. Any of the other panelists like to comment, please?
Yes. This is Jaime Binder. Before answering your question, Jeff, please let me mention something regarding cooperation. Using the language of the game theory, it seems to me that we are playing the game prisoner's dilemma. Everybody knows that the best solution is to cooperate. However, the decision is not to cooperate. And that is a dominant strategy. To illustrate this, picture a theater that catches fire. Everyone runs to the exit door, but the doors open inward. If everyone keeps pushing, the doors will remain closed. It takes a tremendous cooperative effort to get everyone to stop pushing, move backwards, and open the door. It is extremely difficult to people to collaborate. What do we need? We need a fireman to break the door from the outside so everyone can get out. Who is this fireman in our field? With all due respect, is not the Minister of Health. It's the Minister of Finance or the President of each Latin American and Caribbean country. I believe that the next step we must take in our region to avoid or minimize the drastic restrictions on aviation is to hold a meeting of the highest level between the President of the Council of ICAO, the Secretary of ICAO, along with the director from IATA and ACI, in order to explain the challenge aviation faces and the solutions created by the CART. I think these meetings can make a difference.
Thank you very much for that that proposal. Comments from any of the other panelists? Yeah?
Jeff, could you repeat the question? Sorry, I lost the signal and I have to come back.
Oh yeah, this was really around how do we make the ICAO CART process real? How does we get it implemented on a consistent basis across the different countries? How do we get that some leadership and cooperation around all of that activity?
Okay, I would like to comment just a few words, just to say that since the first beginning, CART is something, this word is something that is in our mind right now. In Latin American, Caribbean, when you talk with everyone, we understand about CART. But Jaime said something that is very important, and I believe Jeff said as well. Right now, in this process, to find a way out and to make CART useful, I believe that we have to keep in our mind, because as industry, we have saying that all the time. ACI is saying that, AIRA, ALTA, but is the idea of harmonization. Right now, if you ask me which word is more important right now, the harmonization. Because as an industry, we can say, we can show, but if the authority doesn't understand about the importance of that. We're going to fail in this region. And why that? Because the people are not going to come back to travel. If you are afraid what you are going to face in another country, you are not going to come back to travel. It is impact the whole system of civil aviation. So when I know that there is a harmonization and I can travel abroad, and I'm sure that I'm going to come back home without any problem, but with the whole protocols, this is the only way right now to bring confidence to the people to come back. Because data we have done already, CART we have done already, we have explained that, but this feeling is right now the most important that I believe we should try to make the people understand.
Okay, thank you. I mean, from my perspective as well, I believe that it's not just the confidence of the traveling public, but it's actually the confidence of governments that needs to be created here, because it's governments that need confidence to be able to open up borders, open up international air travel again. So, I mean, I think one of the criticisms of the air transport industry is that it talks to itself so much, you know, and in the past that has meant that we've not spoken enough to the ministers of finance or the minister of the environment or so on. Now the game is different with the medical authorities, and I think, you know, a part of the success of the CART process has been that the World Health Organization and others have been involved. So, you know, good marks on where we've got to so far, but how do we actually now move forward? Because the industry needs to get its messages out there. Back to what Jeff was saying about the importance of communications. So I'd like to return to Jaime's suggestion here, which is basically where I wanted to end up with this meeting anyway, which is, you know, what do we need to do as the air transport sector now to make the CART process happen effectively, to build that government confidence and so on. And in some senses, I'm going to pressure the panel now, because I think we have pretty much the organizations here who can work together in the way that Jaime was proposing, and come up with an air transport solution that we can communicate effectively to governments and to others. So I'd like to ask the panelists now for your views on the proposal from Jaime.
Jeff, if I may?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yes, I totally agree with what Jaime said. I'm 100% on board, but we have to be cautious. We definitely need to go to the president, to the head of the state, but we need to also understand that they're right now thinking of how many people I'm going to vaccinate. They're pretty much, their head is elsewhere, okay? If my brain works properly, here in the US, we have 26% of the people that have the second dose and around 40% of the people that got the first dose, okay? Most of the countries in our region are struggling to get to that. Their main focus is, how can I get my people vaccinated, my staff? So before we go to them, we need to do an exercise, and pretty much everything that we're saying here is done. We just got to put it together. And how can we get the CART and all the action that everyone has taken, put them together and put that in front of the state, the president, of the Ministry of Transport, of Health, and said, listen, this is important because with this project, we were able to have this amount of people on board of airplane and increase the economic of a country. If we don't go there with specifics, I'm afraid that timing, we're going to lose that valuable time that we have with them. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Javier, there. And I think one of the issues here is that the advocacy from us should not be about us, should not be about rescuing the air transport industry. It needs to be about the value that the air transport industry can bring to solve the problems that the governments have, including distribution of vaccines, etc. I'd like to return back to Juan Carlos here. Juan Carlos, you were describing at the beginning of this how you'd effectively sort of brought together this risk management plan and this process within Colombia, involving many parties outside of the air transport sector and getting that buy-in. Can you say a little bit more about that? What was the magic dust that enabled, that you were able to sprinkle, that made this happen in Colombia? And are there some lessons learned or best practices there that can be extrapolated to the regional level?
Well, thank you, Jeff. I believe that it was not our brilliance, it was more the circumstances that forced us to do that. And I explained that air transport is an industry that is heavily centralized and regulated by Aeronautica Civil of Colombia. And we traditionally, we have the last saying, all power to regulate this industry and decide where the service should go or not. And that has been the premise by which we have organized air transport traditionally in our country. The beginning of this pandemic, of this crisis, show us very quickly that that was no longer the case, that this crisis came very quickly, and that there were other government authorities making the decisions for us, and that local governments even were tremendously afraid of this new phenomenon of this pandemic, and it was necessary to work with them. So even though we resisted, even though at the beginning we said, but why the Ministry of Health needs to regulate this, or why a local government needs to decide about flights or no flights to the region, the fact here is, because of the legal system and the way our country reacted to the pandemic, is that they were making the decisions, and that brought us very quickly to act, let's say, with humility in a sense, and reach to them. And so what we did is that we went to look at the best practices internationally. We had the privilege to work with the Civil Aviation Authority of China, with the government of Korea, with European authorities, to see how they were reacting to this, what sort of protocols they were applying. And in that sense, to bring those best practices and share it with the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health very quickly, and we invited them all through the process, very quickly recognized that they were valuing that exercise and that we were contributing and speaking the same language in a way, and sharing the same concerns we had. And therefore they came on board and worked with us in these health protocols. They validated those health protocols, and they validated our recovery plan. Once we gained the trust and we worked together with the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Health, I have to say they have been our stronger allies in a way, because even when the public or a local government shows some concern with the health protocols or with the reactivation of air connectivity, it's the Ministry of Health that is giving strong reasons to them why this service does not create an additional risk. Yeah. Even in our country, we have a legal discussion about the requirements of PCR tests. And I have to say that the Ministry of Health, because of all the literature and so on, they felt that PCR tests were not mandatory at a point. However, there was a decision by a court in Colombia that brought this mandatory, and we are requiring that here. But even the Ministry of Health, they were very progressive in that sense. So I believe that
working with external parties, working with health authorities and local governments have proved the benefit for us in the recovery of air connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We always talk a lot about cooperation or collaboration and leadership. These things, but they don't happen by themselves. There needs to be a catalyst somewhere. So within this group, who should be that catalyst? Where does that leadership come from, and how can we move forward on a proper collaborative basis?
Jeff, I just want to say something in relation to what you just said and what was said before. I think that once again here, technology plays a very important role. We haven't actually discussed the issue of the travel passports or the COVID passports or vaccine passports. I think that that is absolutely essential for the recovery in our region, because let's say that the population of Latin America can be very creative when it comes to demonstrating that they've got a PCR test or not. And we know that in some countries it has happened that people said that they had a PCR test, but that was not really the case. And that is why travel passports are so incredibly important. A reliable system that you can demonstrate without any doubt that indeed you got a shot, either the vaccine or the PCR test. And I think that to do that, I mean, people like ICAO, for example, can play a very important role, or LACAC, can be very, very important in actually ensuring that the governments fully trust that there is a system in place that can actually provide that level of certainty that we're looking for. Because, the thing here is that if we leave it to the creativity of the people in our region, it is not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. That suggests.
Sorry. Can I say something, Jeff?
Sure.
I totally agree with Rafael. The use of new technologies that screen passengers for tests and eventually the vaccines called simplify the procedures of the sanitary borders and provide reliable information to the governments. There are already several initiatives in the market. One of them is the IATA Travel Pass initiative. I will add that it's important to create mechanisms for the protection of personal data along with the promotion of these technologies.
I agree absolutely with that, Jaime. But then do we need to put together a proposal that lays this out for governments in very simple language that says you can restart air travel again because the industry and the civil aviation authorities are committed to the following things. We're committed to the CART, to implement the CART. We're committed to use travel passports. We're committed to the health and safety protocols that have been put in place, etc. And these are, in other words, here is the commitment from the civil aviation community to the rest of government. So, let us move forward. Is there something there, something of that nature that hasn't really been brought together? We've got a lot of, as usual, this industry has lots of good stuff, but it's fragmented. Has anybody pulled that story together so that you could have a conference with governments in the Latin American region to re-stimulate civil aviation?
Yeah, Jeff, if I may, I'll answer your question. And also I see here that Elio Novo put something about that. The question is how to connect the sector with the government to reduce the restrictions. I would say again that right now, since in order to avoid to change the players a lot, I would say that Juan, with the whole respect, I believe that this should be led by ICAO as CART was done. It's like let's get together. Do you remember the nights on the round table?
Yeah.
We have to come back for that. We have to come back for that because ICAO has a leader, it's a natural leadership. When you talk about the civil aviation, immediately you talk about the ICAO. So this leadership with the industry again, but also at this time, Jaime, with respect, with the the health ministers. Why that? Because the vaccine is there. We are able to deliver that on cargo, but most part of the cargo is made actually in the passenger flight. So we could resume that, showing to them that we are not vector. The studies here. If you don't know that, the studies here. What about the air? Don't be concerned, because in the cabin is different. Each 3 minutes, the air is changed in the cabin. What about the protocols? Don't you worry about that, because this protocol we have done in the cart in the past. So if you go to the airport, if you go to the airlines, which means that Javier said we have the whole tools, but we don't have to say this for us anymore. We have to say that for the ministers of health. And why I'm emphasizing the Minister of Health? Because if you go for the Minister of Finance, usually we go to ask for some financial support. But what happened is that they have so many problems to solve in each country that this is not going to solve our problem right now. The way that I see and the way that we see as ALTA, the light is over there. The vaccine is there. It's only to say to them, look, we have protocols. Don't worry about the air. If someone is saying something different, this is not true. And we have the data, as 2 + 2 is 4, that we can show to you the real life and what is happening at the airport and in the airlines. I believe that with this, they will be able to lift the like quarantines or PCR. Why PCR and not antigen? Okay, we have explained for that. The technology has been developed for that. So I believe that under the umbrella of the ICAO, these nights should be back on the round table again, but with this new actor, the Minister of Health or someone in the health in the health sector of the country. And why that? Because I believe that 98% at least, the decision of PCR, the decision why quarantine, this is under the umbrella of the ministers of health. So thank you very much. Was that?
Jeff, may I add something?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I guess, I don't want to fall victim to, the vice of journalists and try to promote here to create a new communications model. But I think that's key. It's basically defining messages that the industry can repeat, all actors that can bring to any table. And that's absolutely indispensable. It is the key aspect. And then we should also focus on the advantages that the region has. Europe is undergoing a huge political debate over, this passport thing because of the identification information that they will have to share. Well, Canada has long had a, coming from there, to some extent, this huge discussion, especially after 9/11. Well, if we are going to, how are we going to go across the border into the US before, you could almost walk into it without any document? Well, the fact of the matter is that, we need an ID card, and people were against that. Well, Latin America has a great advantage. We all have ID cards in Latin American countries. So there's a lot of things that we are a step, ahead of other regions of the world. So I think it's a communications thing, and then taking advantage of the reality of the countries and what has done. But again, I do not want to promote here to have an communications model for the industry, but to do rely on communications.
Yeah, but thanks for that, Jeff. I'm conscious of time. We do need to wrap up this. But I take your point, though, Jeff. And one of the things when people talk about collaboration and it never happens, it's because the project to make it happen is not defined. If we can bring together the various parties to work on a specific proposal, then you get collaboration because you've got a deliverable and people are focused. And it seems to me that that's what's needed here for the region. Is the deliverable is almost this: what is the communications package for the air transport sector in Latin America that can be pushed into governments and other organizations? So I think we are looking for that. We are looking for that leadership. I think it's probably inevitable that it is the ICAO region that needs to take that first step, but that the other parties on this call, and perhaps some other players as well, need to play a very active role in this, so that the industry voice can be heard with the medical authorities and with others. With that, I'd like to move to the very final stage of this panel. I'd like to go round in the order that you spoke, and basically to ask you, having listened to all of this, what are your hopes and expectations from the perspective of your organization or personally on this subject now? What do you want to see happen? So Juan Carlos, let's start with you, please.
Well, now the challenge that we have is to reactivate or to continue to strengthen international air connectivity and continue to strengthen our domestic air connectivity. The basics are there at the domestic level and is more within the control of our own country. The big challenge is internationally, as it will require again to interact with other governments and authorities. So we will focus our efforts there.
Okay, thank you. And bring those best practices with you that you were talking about earlier as well. Jaime, thanks for your proposal. What are your hopes and expectations?
My expectations, of course, is recover the aviation sector. But as a final word, I will direct myself to air passengers. I will say trust in the system and follow the rules in airports and aircraft. They exist for your own protection. The air carriers will transport you in a safe way. Enjoy your flight.
Excellent message, thank you. Rafael.
Yes, well, basically, I think it's all been said, but harmonization, you know, common procedures and protocols, that's, I think, the most important thing. Obviously, we want to recover as fast as possible, but if we don't have those, that protocols, common protocols and harmonization is going to be much more difficult.
Okay, thank you. And José, Ricardo, for the all-important airlines.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all. Actually, it's the same. It's harmonization is everything, and information. Get the right information, and I believe that the passenger, they're in the government as well. They are going to see that this sector in the whole chain is safe, because this is something. This is our core. Work with safety is our core since the first beginning of the aviation. And we are in the search level of the safety that right now we have the bio-safety. So you have to be confident when you go to fly. So what I would like to see is the people come back to the airports, to our flights. But I believe that this is going to be possible just with the right information to the right people. That's why harmonization and work with the under the umbrella of ICAO as well for the new table, round table, to talk about the process is very important at this moment when we have the vaccine in front of us. So that is it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. And over to Javier, please, for your final words.
Thank you, Jeff. I think I'm going to steal some of the items that we have at the Complete Air Traffic System Global Council. The main goal is to agree on a common vision. What do we want? We need to go to governments. Okay, let's agree on that. Okay, and then understand what we want to do, what we want, and what we need to do, and then we have to achieve it together. We need to all go as a group to the governments. Let's all go as a group as governments. Harmonization will happen once we get all that together. We're already working together, so let's bring that step level to the next level, and that's my words, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier. And last but not least, to Jeff, please.
I would like to see, to turn this crisis into an opportunity for a better reality once the new normal has set in, and to use the power of common and harmonized, to use that word, which is very good, of harmonized communication tools for the advancement of the industry as soon as possible, because this is urgent.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to all the panelists for your ideas and your contributions today. There's certainly some substance behind that, and the sense that I get from this is a great deal of commitment. And whilst perhaps it's too early to talk about optimism, there's a great deal of confidence is exuding from you. I think that we can find a way through this, and if we just put that little bit more effort in there, then the industry can indeed return to good health and resilience. So thank you for your comments. This was about leadership and cooperation, and that is clearly the message that we have here, that this group of organizations that we have had on this excellent panel need to come together, create that proposition that will convince others that air transport in the region has a healthy future and needs to reopen as soon as possible. And with that conclusion, I'd now like to hand back to Juan Carlos for some final remarks and a conclusion, please.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And it is very challenging to summarize the conclusions of this very rich conversation that we had. And I will perhaps start by highlighting that all members of the panel recognized the tremendous efforts and the progress that have been made through the adoption of recommendations by ICAO. The CART documents provide important guidance, and what is more important, these documents have been built in cooperation among different stakeholders. Is the industry, is the regional organizations, it is the member states, which in a new form of work and cooperation very quickly have produced these recommendations. Now the challenge that lies ahead also is recognized by everyone, which is the effective implementation of those recommendations and how this implementation will translate into the recovery of air connectivity, especially international air connectivity. A second aspect perhaps that I would like to mention is that whilst there has been some reactivation of air connectivity around the world, the region lags behind. And these have been mentioned by some of the panelists, how in South America still we are at a low level of recovery of international flights, and that's a challenge or a situation that should draw the attention of the authorities in our region. We heard how this is a global, multi-sectoral, multi-dimensional crisis, as Jaime has well put, and Ricardo has highlighted or stressed the importance of progressing in the harmonization in the region and the need for governments to be more proactive and more involved in the recovery of the industry. And in that sense, he made an invitation to all civil aviation authorities that are present here to reach out to different levels in the government in order to progress in that line. Rafael has highlighted how the effects of the stop of international flights and the reduction in the name of passengers and the income of this, the airport industry in Latin America, and how we are perhaps some 70% down in traffic, and the invitation that he has stressed is to make better use of technology. The technology is there, and that technology can help us to facilitate international air travel And that was a very clear message put by Rafael from ACI-LAC. Javier has mentioned how in the region, around the world, but especially in the region, have made tremendous efforts to assure the continuity of this business, how the air navigation service provider and initiatives like Cadena in the region are making important contributions in order to make known the best practices and how to continue to increase the air connectivity, especially in our region, which is lagging behind other regions in the world. Jeff have stressed a lot the importance, the key importance of communications, of giving a different dimension to this crisis, and not only presenting the effects, the devastating effects in this industry and the urgent need to facilitate air connectivity so this industry recovers, but also to stress the importance of air transportation for vaccination, for distribution or facing this crisis and the effects of the crisis at the broader level in our region. And in that sense, there was an invitation for the industry to enhance the level of social responsibility in terms of sustainability, in terms of reducing the gender gap, and so have a stronger case to present to the traveling public, the public in general, and to the governments. And in that sense, there were various specific recommendations on how, in pragmatic terms, the industry can speed up the process of recovery. And in that sense, there were important messages to all participants, for example, to implement travel passports or to reach the Ministry of Health in our respective countries in order to get them involved in the process of recovery of international air connectivity. I believe that these are some of the highlights of today's discussion, and I want to thank again our partners, the Hermes organization, and especially Dr. Kostas Iatrou, who has been leading these discussions in different regions of the world. And of course, Jeff Poole, who is the president of Hermes organization, and is a great facilitator for these discussions. Also, the president of ICAO Council, Mr. Salvatore, and also our friends and panelists that have participated and contributed today to this discussion, that we intend to bring some ideas, some fresh ideas, and take a stock of the ongoing efforts and developments to reactivate air connectivity worldwide, and perhaps to recognize that our region still has a long way to go, but this should give us more energy, and we should end up this meeting more committed to facilitate international air connectivity in South America and the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salazar, and thank you everyone connected to our event. We reach up to 120 participants. Once again, I want to thank Hermes Air Transport Organization, Professor Andreas Papatheodorou, and the University of Egan for making this event possible. And of course, ALA as our media partner. A recording will be available at the Hermes website for your consultation, and we are looking forward to meet you again in another event. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Great job.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank you
wonderful
very
day.
much. Bye, everyone.
Bye, ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
And you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.